I never imagined my own parents would one day look me in the eye and tell me my children were not welcome in their home. Yet there I was, standing in my kitchen, staring at my phone in disbelief. Thanksgiving was just a few weeks away, and my mom's voice was unusually light as she spoke. "Honey, we need to talk about Thanksgiving this year." My heart warmed for a moment. Despite all the tension that had existed between us over the years, I still longed for these family traditions. My kids, Olivia and Ethan, adored their grandparents despite the distance that had formed. "Of course, Mom. What's the plan?" I asked, already picturing the way their house would be filled with the smell of roasted turkey, cinnamon, and the warmth of a family gathering. There was a brief pause, just long enough to send a chill down my spine. "Well," Mom continued, clearing her throat, "this year we're doing things a little differently. It's going to be a smaller dinner, just adults, something more intimate." I frowned. "Oh, so no kids at all?" Another pause, then more hesitantly, "Well, no, not exactly." A cold knot twisted in my stomach. "What do you mean?" Mom let out a sigh, as if she were the one being put in an uncomfortable position. "Skyler, we love your kids. We really do, but they're a bit, energetic. And honestly, we just feel like it would be better if you left them with a sitter this year." I gripped the edge of the counter. "So, just my kids?" "What about Michael's? Michael, my older brother, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes, even when he did." Mom hesitated. And that's when I knew. "Michael and Sarah are coming with their boys," she admitted. "But you know how well-behaved they are, Skyler. They're just quieter, more refined. It's easier to have them at the table." A wave of heat flushed through me. I felt like I had been slapped, like the floor had suddenly been pulled out from under me. "They're just children," I said, my voice tight. "Olivia is 7 and Ethan is 4. Of course they have energy, but they're sweet and they love you." "We're just trying to have a peaceful evening," Mom replied, her tone clipped now, irritated that I wasn't just accepting this. "It's not personal, Skyler." "Not personal?" I clenched my jaw, swallowing back the sharp words fighting to spill out. It wasn't just about Thanksgiving. It was the way they had always treated my children like an afterthought while putting Michael's boys on a pedestal. The way they showed up at their school plays but never came to Olivia's dance recital. The way Christmas gifts were always just a little extra for Michael's kids. And now they weren't even hiding it. "I can't believe this," I whispered. "You're actually telling me that my kids aren't welcome, but Michael's are." "Oh, Skyler, don't be dramatic." Mom sighed. "It's just one dinner. You and Noah are still invited, of course." I almost laughed at the absurdity. They wanted me there, but not the two people I loved most in this world. I swallowed hard. "No, Mom. If my kids aren't welcome, then neither am I." A long silence stretched between us. Then Mom exhaled sharply, as if I were the one being unreasonable. "Suit yourself." And just like that, she hung up. I stood there, staring at the phone, my breath unsteady. I could hear my kids in the next room, giggling as they built a pillow fort, oblivious to the fact that their grandparents, the ones they adored, had just cast them aside like an inconvenience. I took a deep breath, my mind racing. I'd spent my whole life trying to please my parents, trying to earn their approval, but at what cost? And if I let them get away with this, if I went to that dinner while my children sat at home wondering why they weren't good enough, what kind of mother would that make me? No, I wasn't doing this anymore. They had made their choice. Now it was time for me to make mine, and they would regret it sooner than they thought. The weight of my mother's words lingered long after the call ended. I stood in my kitchen, the quiet hum of the refrigerator filling the silence, my phone still clutched in my hand. My fingers trembled as I set it down, my heart pounding with a mixture of anger and sadness. I had always known my parents favored Michael, but I had convinced myself that it wasn't as bad as it seemed, that deep down they loved all of us equally. But tonight, they had ripped away any illusion of fairness. They didn't even try to hide it anymore. They loved his children more. A sudden laugh, pure and carefree, echoed from the living room. I turned to see Olivia and Ethan still playing in their pillow fort, completely unaware of the rejection that had just taken place. My chest tightened. They deserved better. I squared my shoulders and walked into the living room, forcing a smile. "All right, you two," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Who's ready for movie night?" Ethan immediately perked up. "Can we watch the one with the talking dog?" I scooped him up into my arms, kissing his soft curls. "Of course we can, buddy." But as we curled up on the couch, the anger inside me refused to settle. I had spent years trying to fit into my parents' world, playing by their rules, hoping that if I just did everything right, they would finally see me as equal to Michael. But it had never been enough, and I was done trying. The next morning, I woke up to a text from my brother Michael. "Mom said you're being difficult about Thanksgiving. Why do you always have to make everything so dramatic?" I stared at the screen, my jaw tightening. Of course, she had already run to him. "Oh, so she told you she uninvited my kids but invited yours?" I replied. The typing bubbles appeared, then stopped. A minute passed before he finally responded. "She just wants a calm dinner, Skyler. You know how your kids can be. A lot. Like they were a burden. Like they were something to be tolerated, not loved." Something inside me snapped. "Enjoy your perfect Thanksgiving, Michael. I won't be there." I turned off my phone before he could respond. They didn't want me or my children at their table? Fine, I wouldn't be part of their world at all. And they were about to find out what that really meant. For years, I had been the reliable one, the one who always helped when they needed something. When my parents needed someone to pick up their groceries, they called me. When their Wi-Fi stopped working, I was the one who drove over to fix it. When they wanted help organizing a family party, I was the one stuck making calls and running errands. And Michael? He got to be the golden child, doing the bare minimum while reaping all the rewards. But if I wasn't part of their preferred family, then they weren't going to benefit from me anymore. A week before Thanksgiving, my mother called again. I debated ignoring it, but finally answered. "Hello, Skyler," she said, her tone cautious. "I just wanted to check in. I know you were upset, but I really hope you'll reconsider. We would love to have you and Noah there. Not you and the kids, just you and Noah." I took a deep breath. "I meant what I said, Mom. If my kids aren't welcome, neither am I." She sighed heavily, as if I were exhausting her. "I just don't understand why you're being so stubborn. It's just one night. You know how much Michael's boys mean to us." And there it was, the final painful confirmation that my children, the two little humans I loved more than anything, would never be enough for her. I clenched my jaw. "You've made it clear where we stand, Mom. I won't bother you again." I ended the call before she could finish, and this time I didn't cry. I started small. When my dad called that weekend to help him set up his new TV, I let the call go to voicemail. When my mom sent a text asking if I could pick up her prescription, I left it unread. For years, I had been at their beck and call, always available, always reliable. But not anymore. And it didn't take long for them to notice. By the time Thanksgiving rolled around, I had missed a total of 12 calls and ignored 6 texts. Then, on the morning of Thanksgiving, I got a message from Michael. "Mom and Dad are really upset that you're ignoring them. Are you seriously going to let this go this far?" I replied. It already went too far when they told me my kids weren't welcome. This time, he didn't reply. I put my phone on silent and turned my attention to my real family. Olivia and Ethan were at the table helping Noah mix pancake batter, covered in flour, laughing hysterically. This was our Thanksgiving, and for the first time in years, I felt completely at peace. But little did I know, my parents weren't done yet, and their next move would be something I'd never forgive. Thanksgiving morning was peaceful in a way I hadn't experienced in years. No rushing to get the kids dressed in their best clothes, no stress over making the perfect side dish, no anxious glances at the clock to make sure we weren't late. Instead, we were in our own little world, our home filled with laughter, the smell of pancakes and maple syrup hanging in the air. Olivia and Ethan took turns stirring the batter while Noah flipped the pancakes with exaggerated skill, making them giggle every time he almost dropped one. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Then my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, it rang again. And then again. Noah shot me a concerned look. Want me to turn it off? I hesitated, then shook my head. No, if it's an emergency, I should at least know. I swiped to answer, keeping my voice flat. What is it, Mom? Oh, now you pick up, she huffed. I suppose you're just sitting at home feeling sorry for yourself while we're all here having a lovely dinner. I sighed. Mom, if you called to gloat, I really don't have time. That's not why I called. Her voice turned sharp. I need to ask you something. I pinched the bridge of my nose. What now? Did you cancel the credit card? The room suddenly felt very still. I turned away from Noah and lowered my voice. What are you talking about? Your father's credit card, she said. The one we've been using for groceries, gas, essential things. It was declined this morning. A slow, icy realization crept up my spine. The credit card she was talking about wasn't theirs. It was mine. Years ago, when Dad was recovering from surgery and money was tight, I had added them as authorized users on my account, temporarily, just to help them through a rough patch. I had meant to remove them when they got back on their feet. But life got busy, and I had forgotten. And they had never reminded me. I clenched my jaw. You mean my credit card? A pause, then Mom scoffed. Oh, don't be so dramatic, Skyler. It's just a card. You make good money and we figured… You figured what? My voice was shaking now. That you'd just keep using my money? That I wouldn't notice? Oh, don't act like this is some big betrayal. We raised you. The least you could do is support us now. I inhaled sharply. Are you serious? After telling me my kids weren't good enough to come to Thanksgiving, you still expected me to keep paying for your groceries? Are you even hearing yourself? Mom let out a long, dramatic sigh. You know what, Skyler? This is exactly why we don't like having difficult conversations with you. You always overreact. Overreact? I was done. You're right about one thing, I said, my voice dangerously calm. I did cancel the card. And since we're having honest conversations now, let me make something very clear. You won't see another cent from me. Ever. Mom gasped, as if I had slapped her. Skyler, don't be ridiculous. Cut her off. And while we're at it, don't expect Christmas gifts, birthday gifts, or anything else either. You made your choice when you told me my kids weren't welcome, and now I'm making mine. Silence. Then, in a voice colder than I'd ever heard from her, she said, You'll regret this. And then she hung up. For a moment, I just stood there, gripping the phone so tightly my fingers ached. Then, slowly, I turned back toward the kitchen. Noah was watching me carefully. Everything okay? I forced a small smile. Yeah, I said, voice steadier than I felt. Just taking out the trash. He didn't ask any more questions. We spent the rest of the day in our own Thanksgiving, watching movies, baking cookies, playing board games, and for the first time in years, there was no underlying stress. No need to walk on eggshells, no pressure to be someone I wasn't. But as peaceful as it was, something told me this wasn't over. And I was right, because my parents weren't just going to let their golden source of money walk away, and their next move would prove exactly what kind of people they really were. The silence from my parents didn't last long. 3 days after Thanksgiving, my phone lit up with an incoming call. Michael. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity got the best of me. I exhaled sharply and answered. What do you want? What the hell, Skyler? He snapped, skipping any pleasantries. Mom just called me in tears, saying you cut them off. What is wrong with you? I closed my eyes, pinching the bridge of my nose. Did she also tell you that they've been using my credit card for years without my knowledge? A pause. Well, she said you were helping them out. Helping them out? I let out a humorless laugh. Michael, they've racked up thousands of dollars on my account without asking, while treating my kids like garbage. But sure, let's act like I'm the bad guy here. He sighed, clearly trying to control his frustration. Look, I get that you're mad, but cutting them off completely? That's extreme. You mean the way they completely excluded my children from Thanksgiving? I shot back. They just wanted a peaceful evening, Skyler. Mom said your kids can be a little wild. My grip on the phone tightened. Oh, I see. So they can use my money, but my kids aren't good enough for their table. Got it. He groaned. You're twisting this. No, Michael. I'm finally seeing it for what it is. There was a long pause, then his voice turned, calculating. Look, maybe we can work something out. What if you just kept helping them but set limits, like a smaller monthly transfer? That way, no one has to suffer over a misunderstanding. A cold laugh bubbled up in my throat. Let me get this straight. You want me to keep sending them money after they literally told me they love your kids more than mine? They didn't mean it like that, he grumbled. They said it, Michael. He had no response for that. After a moment, his voice turned stiff. Fine. If you want to be selfish, that's on you. But don't expect Mom and Dad to forgive you anytime soon. I smirked, shaking my head. I'll survive. Then, before he could argue, I hung up. For the next few weeks, my parents played the silent treatment game. No calls, no texts. I figured they were hoping I'd cave, come crawling back, begging for their approval like I always had. But what they didn't realize was that, for the first time in my life, I didn't need it anymore. And just when I thought they'd finally given up, they pulled one last desperate stunt. It was the week before Christmas when the letter arrived. Noah found it in the mailbox, his brow furrowing as he read the sender's name. It's from your parents. I stiffened. Oh, great. Let me guess. Guilt, manipulation, or straight-up gaslighting? He smirked. Why don't we find out? I took the envelope, my stomach twisting as I tore it open. Inside was a formal legal document. My breath caught as I read the words. They were demanding reimbursement for years of emotional and financial support. I let out a disbelieving laugh. You've got to be kidding me. Noah took the letter, scanning it quickly. They're saying you owe them for raising you and for all the financial sacrifices they made for your well-being. He looked up, jaw tightening. Are they actually trying to bill you for your own childhood? Apparently they were. They had even included itemized costs. Things like food, clothes, school supplies, medical expenses from when I was a child. And at the bottom of the page, a final sum. $78,542. I blinked. They seriously think I'm going to give them nearly $80,000? Noah scoffed. They must be desperate. I exhaled slowly, anger burning through me. This wasn't about money. This was control, a final desperate attempt to pull me back into their grip. I looked at Noah, my mind already made up. I think it's time I pay them a little visit. The next day, I drove to my parents' house, gripping the letter in my hands. I knocked, and when Mom opened the door, her face immediately hardened. Oh, so now you show up. I didn't rise to the bait. I held up the letter. You seriously thought this would work? She folded her arms. It's what's fair. I let out a sharp laugh. Fair? You want to charge me for being your child while expecting free money from me for the rest of your lives? Dad appeared in the doorway, his expression smug. We sacrificed a lot for you, Skyler. And now you're abandoning us. I stared at them, shaking my head. No, Dad. You abandoned me when you made it clear that my kids weren't good enough, when you lied and stole from me, when you put a price tag on my worth. Mom's lips pressed into a thin line. If you don't want to pay, then I guess we'll have to involve lawyers. I met her gaze, unfazed. Go ahead. Take me to court. Try to explain to a judge why you're suing your own daughter for expenses from 20 years ago. See how that goes. Silence. For the first time, they looked unsure. Dad cleared his throat. We just thought you'd want to make things right. I laughed. Oh, I am making things right. Right. Now. I ripped the letter in half, watching their eyes widen. I am done being your personal ATM. Mom gasped. You ungrateful little... I turned on my heel. Merry Christmas, I called over my shoulder, striding back to my car. And for the first time in my life, I felt lighter. As I drove away, I realized something. They weren't upset about the money. They were upset because for the first time ever, I had all the power, and I wasn't giving it back. I thought that after ripping up their ridiculous demand for money, my parents would finally back off. That maybe, just maybe, they would sit in the wreckage of their own arrogance and realize that they had pushed me too far. But people like them don't change. They just escalate. It started small. A text from Mom. Skyler, this is ridiculous. We're family. You don't turn your back on family over a silly argument. I ignored it. The next day, another message. We forgive you. Come to Christmas dinner and we'll forget this ever happened. I almost laughed. They forgive me? Then, a few hours later, one from Michael. They're really hurting, Skyler. Just apologize so we can move on. I rolled my eyes. Of course, in his world, I was the one who had done something wrong. I typed out a response. Funny. They weren't hurting when they were stealing from me or when they told me my kids weren't welcome. I think they'll survive. I hit send and blocked his number. Then Christmas Eve arrived. Noah and I had just put the finishing touches on the tree, and Olivia and Ethan were in their pajamas, dancing around the living room, too excited to sleep. It was perfect. And then the doorbell rang. Noah and I exchanged a look. No way, he muttered. I walked to the door and peered through the peephole. Sure enough, Mom and Dad. I considered ignoring them, but then I spotted what they were holding. A giant, beautifully wrapped box. I sighed and opened the door. What do you want? Mom's face lit up with forced cheerfulness. Merry Christmas, sweetheart. Dad held out the gift. For the kids, I folded my arms. No, thanks. Mom's smile wavered. Skyler, don't be stubborn. Let's not ruin Christmas over this. You already ruined Christmas, I shot back, when you told me my children weren't good enough for your table. Remember that? Her mouth opened, then closed. Dad sighed. Come on, Skyler, let's just be a family again. I stared at them, feeling nothing but exhaustion. You don't want to be a family, I said quietly. You want me to go back to being useful. Their silence told me everything I needed to know. I shook my head. Take your gift and go. Mom's expression hardened. Skyler, don't be selfish. Think about the children. I smiled coldly. I am thinking about the children. That's exactly why you're not in their lives anymore. Dad's jaw tightened. You really want to do this? I exhaled. I already did. And with that, I shut the door in their faces. That night, we had the best Christmas ever. Olivia and Ethan tore into their presents, their laughter echoing through the house. We drank hot cocoa, played board games, and watched Christmas movies until they fell asleep on the couch. And for the first time in my life, Christmas wasn't about trying to prove myself. It was about us. Real family, chosen family. The kind that doesn't come with conditions. The kind that doesn't make you earn love. The kind that loves you because they want to, not because they expect something in return. I thought that was the end of it. That after being cut off financially, humiliated at Christmas, and rejected at my front door, my parents would finally accept that I was done. But I underestimated just how much control they thought they still had over me. Because on New Year's Eve, they did something I never saw coming. New Year's Eve was supposed to be a fresh start. A night to leave the past behind and step into a better future. That's what I told myself as I set up the snack table, laughter and music filling our home. Olivia and Ethan were buzzing with excitement, running around in their little party hats, counting down the hours until midnight. Noah was pouring champagne for us, a soft smile on his face. It was our night, our celebration. And then the knock. I froze, my stomach twisting. Noah glanced at me. "You think—" I already knew. I walked to the door, took a deep breath, and opened it. And there they were. Mom, Dad, Michael, and Michael's wife, Emily. It was an ambush. I crossed my arms. "What do you want?" Mom smiled, but it was the same forced, sugary tone she always used when she wanted something. "We just want to talk." "No thanks," I said flatly. Dad sighed. "Skyler, enough. You've made your point. Now let's fix this before things go too far." I narrowed my eyes. "Too far? What does that even mean?" Mom exchanged a look with Michael. "We just don't want this to affect the kids." Something about her tone made my skin crawl. "What are you talking about?" Michael stepped forward, arms crossed over his chest like he was the one who had been wronged. "Mom and Dad have been talking to a lawyer." A cold wave of dread rolled through me. "A lawyer?" I repeated slowly. Mom nodded, her eyes gleaming with false sympathy. "We're just worried, Skyler. You've cut your children off from their real family over a silly misunderstanding. That's not fair to them." I felt my pulse pound. "What are you trying to say?" Dad cleared his throat. "We've been looking into grandparents' rights." For a moment, all I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. Then I laughed. It wasn't a small chuckle. It was loud, unhinged, and sharp. They thought they could legally force their way back into my life, into my kids' lives. Michael's face twisted. "What's so funny?" I wiped my eyes. "Oh, you're serious? You think any judge is going to look at this situation and side with you?" Mom's lips pressed together. "We've done nothing wrong." "Nothing wrong?" I repeated, stepping forward. "You stole from me. You treated my kids like second-class citizens, and now, because I finally cut you off, you think you can bully your way back in?" Dad's face darkened. "You don't want to do this, Skyler." I met his glare with a smile. "Oh, but I do." I pulled out my phone and held it up. "I want you to think real carefully about what you're about to do," I said, voice cold. "Because I've got every text, every voicemail, every demand for money. And I promise you, if you try, this I will bury you." Emily gasped. "Skyler, come on." "No," I snapped, eyes locked on my parents. "You have no case. You know it. I know it. And if you keep pushing me, I will make sure that everyone you know sees exactly who you really are." A beat of silence. Then Mom's face twisted in anger. "You're being unreasonable." I smiled. "No, Mom. I'm finally being smart." I stepped back into my house and grabbed the door. "Happy New Year," I said sweetly, then slammed the door in their faces. They never went through with their pathetic legal threat. They knew they had nothing. They knew they had lost. In the weeks that followed, I didn't hear from them. Not a text, not a call, nothing. And for the first time in my life, it felt like freedom. The weight of their expectations, gone. The pressure to please them, gone. The endless cycle of guilt and manipulation, gone. Months later, on a sunny spring afternoon, I was sitting on the porch, watching Olivia and Ethan chase bubbles in the yard. Noah handed me a lemonade and sat beside me. "It's been quiet." I nodded. "Yeah, feels good." He smirked. "Think they'll ever try again?" I sipped my drink, watching my kids giggle as they popped the bubbles. Doesn't matter. Because I had already won. I had my kids, my real family, and I'd never let anyone make them feel unwanted again. Looking back, I realized I had spent years chasing my parents' approval, bending over backward to fit into their world, only to see my children and me treated as less than. Their rejection of Olivia and Ethan at Thanksgiving was the final straw, but it was also my wake-up call. I learned that love isn't something you earn through sacrifice or compliance. It's given freely or not at all. By standing up for my kids, I broke free from the cycle of guilt and manipulation that had defined my relationship with my family. I discovered my own strength, not just as a mother, but as someone who could set boundaries and mean them. Most importantly, I learned that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up, who loves unconditionally, and who makes you feel valued. My real family was right here, laughing in our home, free from judgment. I vowed never to let anyone make my children feel unworthy again, and in that promise, I found peace and the courage to choose my own path.
This morning, I walked into my office at Global Tech Solutions, the Chicago skyline gleaming through the glass, unaware that by noon, my world would turn upside down. My name is Zara Thompson. I'm 38, and until today, I was the director of operations for one of America's top software companies. For a decade, I poured my soul into this place, crafting code that protects millions in bank transactions, earning praise from a boss who called me the company's future. But whispers in the halls hinted at a storm brewing, a storm named Daniela, my boss's daughter. As I sipped my coffee, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to unravel, something that would test everything I'd built. 10 years ago, I started at Global Tech Solutions as a junior programmer, a wide-eyed coder with big dreams and a knack for solving problems. The company, nestled in Chicago's bustling tech hub, was already a powerhouse, known for its cutting-edge software. I climbed the ranks through grit and late nights, my proudest achievement being SecureBank, a security system now guarding bank transactions across the U.S. It's the kind of software that hums quietly in the background, protecting people's life savings from hackers. Every line of code felt like a piece of me, woven into the company's success. Global Tech wasn't just a job, it was my legacy, my proof that hard work could carve a place in a world that often overlooked women like me. My boss, Richard Morgan, the CEO, used to be my biggest cheerleader. "Zara, you're the future of this company," he'd say, his voice booming across boardrooms. At 50, with silver streaks in his hair and a tailored suit that screamed old money, Richard had inherited Global Tech from his father, Albert Morgan, the genius who founded it. Albert was a legend, a man who saw potential where others saw obstacles. Richard, though, was different, charming but slippery, his praise often tinged with calculation. Lately, his compliments had dried up, replaced by distracted nods and closed-door meetings. I chalked it up to the stress of running a multi-billion-dollar company, but a nagging doubt lingered, like a shadow I couldn't quite see. This morning started like any other. I arrived at 7 a.m., my heels clicking on the polished floors of our 30th floor office. The view of Lake Michigan always steadied me, a reminder of how far I'd come. I settled at my desk, reviewing overnight reports from the development team. SecureBank was in the middle of a major upgrade, and every detail mattered. My assistant Mary, a sharp 30-year-old with a knack for reading the room, greeted me with a hesitant smile. "Zara, there's talk going around," she said, her voice low. "They say Daniela's joining the company." Daniela Morgan, Richard's 23-year-old daughter, is fresh out of a private university with a business degree. I'd met her at corporate events, her designer heels and smug grin screaming entitlement. "Figures," I replied, eyes on my laptop. "She'll probably start in marketing or something entry-level." Mary bit her lip, her silence louder than words. I brushed it off, focusing on the data streaming across my screen. Daniela was a spoiled kid, sure, but Richard wouldn't be foolish enough to disrupt operations for her. Would he? Global Tech was a well-oiled machine, employing hundreds, with clients from New York to San Francisco. SecureBank alone protects transactions worth billions daily. A rookie like Daniela couldn't just waltz in and mess with that. Still, Mary's unease stuck with me, a splinter in my mind. I thought of Albert, who'd mentored me early on, his gravelly voice urging me to protect what matters. He'd passed away 2 years ago, leaving Richard in charge, but his wisdom still guided me. I glanced at a framed photo on my desk, me and Albert at a product launch, his proud smile a rare treasure. As I typed, my phone buzzed with a message from James, our head of development. Heard anything about Daniela? Team's worried. I sighed, rubbing my temples. The rumor mill was churning, and I needed to keep my team focused. Nothing concrete, I texted back. Let's keep our eyes on the upgrade. But the air felt charged, like the calm before a thunderstorm. Mary hovered by the door, clutching a stack of papers. Zara, you should know, it's not just talk. People saw Daniela with Richard in the executive suite yesterday. My fingers paused over the keyboard. The executive suite? That wasn't a place for interns. A chill ran through me, sharp and unwelcome. Whatever was coming, I had a sinking feeling it would change everything. The whispers about Daniela Morgan swirled in my head like a gathering storm, but nothing could have prepared me for the moment my office door swung open, shattering a decade of loyalty in seconds. I'm Zara Thompson, and this morning, as I sat in my Chicago office at Global Tech Solutions, my world tilted on its axis. Mary's warning about Daniela lingered, her hesitant words echoing as I tried to focus on Secure Bank's upgrade reports. But when Richard Morgan, my boss, stormed in with his daughter smirking behind him, I knew this wasn't about rumors anymore. It was a betrayal, cold and calculated, dressed in designer heels and false promises. I was halfway through a report when Richard barged in without knocking, his face a mask of forced authority. Daniela, 23, trailed him, her glossy hair and diamond earrings catching the light. She scanned my office like a predator sizing up its prey. Zara, we need to talk, Richard said, his voice sharp, devoid of the warmth he once reserved for me. I closed my laptop, heart pounding. Of course, I replied, keeping my tone steady. Is this about the Secure Bank 2.0 rollout? Daniela cut me off, her voice dripping with condescension. It's about my new role, Zara. Richard cleared his throat, avoiding my eyes. You've done adequate work, Zara, but Global Tech needs fresh blood. Daniela's taking over as Director of Operations, effective immediately. The words hit like a punch to the gut. I stared at Richard, waiting for the punchline, but his grim expression confirmed the truth. Daniela, a recent business grad with zero coding experience, was replacing me? Richard, I said, my voice tight. We're mid-rollout for Secure Bank 2.0. The team's stretched thin, and Daniela, Richard interrupted, waving a hand. My daughter has bold ideas, Zara, modern ones. Daniela sauntered to my desk, picking up a framed award for Secure Bank's innovation. This can all be packed by tonight, right? She said, smirking. I'm thinking minimalist decor. Your stuff's a bit dated. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to snap. Secure Bank protects billions in transactions daily. One glitch could cripple banks nationwide. Daniela, I said, forcing calm, Secure Bank is a critical system. A single error could... Richard's face reddened. Don't lecture me, Zara. The decision's final. You're out. Daniela pouted, her voice syrupy. Daddy, can we update the dev team too? Their methods are so last century. Richard nodded, indulgent. Whatever you need, princess. I stood, my chair scraping the floor. This is a mistake, Richard. Not just unfair, it's reckless. Secure Bank isn't a toy. Daniela laughed, a sharp, grating sound. Relax, Zara. My boyfriend's a tech influencer. He's got connections. I nearly choked. An influencer? For a system guarding millions? You have until 5 p.m. to clear out, Richard snapped, turning to leave. Daniela lingered, eyeing my coat rack. And that jacket? So unprofessional. This office needs a class. As they exited, I heard her whisper, Told you she'd crumble, Daddy. I sank into my chair, the room spinning. 10 years, countless nights, breakthroughs, sacrifices, erased for a spoiled heiress. Mary burst in, her face pale. Zara, the team's livid. James and Anna are ready to quit. My pulse raced, but a flicker of resolve sparked inside me. Tell them to hold off, I said, opening my desk's bottom drawer. Mary frowned. But Zara, they can't just fire you. You built Secure Bank. I pulled out a sealed folder, its weight heavy with secrets. Mary, remember 2 years ago after Albert's death, when I asked you to store some documents? Her eyes widened. Yeah, you said they were private. I broke the seal, my fingers steady despite the chaos. It's time to open them. The folder held papers from Albert Morgan, Richard's father, and Global Tech's founder. He'd been my mentor, a visionary who saw potential in me when I was just a coder. These documents were his final gambit, a safeguard against his son's greed. I skimmed the top page, a faint smile forming. Richard thought he'd won, but he didn't know the game wasn't over. Zara, what's in there? Mary asked, her voice trembling. I closed the folder, standing taller. Proof that this company isn't Richard's to give away. As I spoke, Laura from legal poked her head in. Zara, Richard's called an emergency board meeting to announce Daniela's role. I nodded, gripping the folder. Perfect. Let's go. The storm was here, and I was ready to face it. The air in Global Tech Solutions' Chicago headquarters crackled with betrayal as I clutched the sealed folder, its contents a ticking bomb ready to upend Richard Morgan's smug victory. I'm Zara Thompson, and minutes ago, my boss fired me to hand my job to his entitled daughter, Daniela, oblivious to the secret I held. As I strode toward the boardroom, Mary trailing with a box of what looked like my office belongings, my heart pounded, not with fear, but with purpose. Richard thought he'd erased me from the company I'd built, but the documents in my hand, entrusted by his late father Albert, were about to rewrite the story. The emergency board meeting loomed, and I was ready to drop a truth that would shake the very foundations of global tech. The boardroom doors loomed ahead, sleek glass etched with the company logo. Inside, I could hear the low hum of voices, Richard's cronies, no doubt, toasting Daniela's undeserved ascension. Mary hesitated, her eyes wide. Zara, are you sure about this? I gave her a nod, my resolve ironclad. Albert prepared me for this moment. Trust me. Pushing open the doors, I stepped into a sea of tailored suits and skeptical glances. Richard sat at the head of the mahogany table. Daniela perched in my usual chair, scrolling on her phone. The board, 6 older men, loyal to Richard's wallet, chatted amiably. Zara, Richard said, his smile dripping with condescension. No need to be here. HR can email your severance. I ignored him, standing tall by the door. Mary set the box down, its contents not my belongings, but copies of Albert's documents, ready to distribute. I wouldn't miss this meeting for the world, I said, my voice cutting through the room's chatter. Richard's brow furrowed, but he pressed on. Fine, let's begin. I've called you to announce Daniela's appointment as Director of Operations, a bold step forward. The board nodded, predictable as clockwork. I raised a hand, my tone calm but unyielding. Before we proceed, can we review the minutes from the last Founders' Council meeting, specifically March 15th, 2 years ago? Richard's eyes narrowed. That's irrelevant, Zara. I smiled, motioning to Mary, who began passing out folders to each board member. Oh, it's very relevant, I said, especially since it contains Albert Morgan's final will and the true ownership structure of global tech. The room stilled, forks pausing mid-bite from the catered lunch. One director, a grizzled man named Harold, opened his folder, his glasses slipping down his nose. What is this? He asked, scanning the pages. I stepped forward, the folder in my hand open to the key document. It's Albert's last act as founder. Before he died, he transferred 60% of Global Tech's shares to a trust, and I'm its sole beneficiary. Gasps rippled through the room. Richard shot to his feet, his face flushing. That's absurd! I inherited everything! Laura, the legal director, a no-nonsense woman in her 40s, stood holding her copy. As counsel, I can confirm these documents are legitimate, notarized, and filed with the state. Zara is the majority shareholder. Daniela looked up from her phone, confusion clouding her smug expression. Daddy, what's she talking about? Richard sputtered, but I pressed on, my voice steady. Albert set 3 conditions for the trust's beneficiary: drive technological innovation, uphold the company's original vision, and protect employees from arbitrary decisions. He chose me because I've done exactly that. The memory of Albert's final night flooded back, vivid as if it were yesterday. He'd called me to his Lake Forest home, his frail form barely filling the armchair. "Zara," he'd said, his voice a rasp, "I've watched you. You don't just write code, you care about the people it serves. Richard sees dollar signs. You see lives to protect." I'd been stunned, unsure why he was confiding in me. "Why tell me this, Albert?" I'd asked. His eyes, sharp despite his illness, met mine. "Because someone must guard Global Tech's soul, its innovation, its heart. That's you." He'd handed me the trust documents, swearing me to secrecy until the time was right. I'd promised to honor his faith, a vow I now fulfilled. Back in the boardroom, silence hung heavy. Harold adjusted his glasses, reading aloud. "The trust activates if leadership threatens the company's mission. Zara, you're claiming that's now?" I nodded, meeting each board member's gaze. Richard's decision to replace me with Daniela, who lacks the expertise to manage SecureBank, proves it. Albert foresaw this. Richard slammed a fist on the table. "Lies! My father would never—" I cut him off, holding up Albert's handwritten letter. Its ink faded, but unmistakable. "He did, Richard. The night before he died, he told me himself." The boardroom was a powder keg, and I'd just lit the fuse. Whatever came next, Global Tech's future hung in the balance, and I was ready to fight for it. The boardroom of Global Tech Solutions was a battlefield, the air thick with shock as I, Zara Thompson, stood holding Albert Morgan's letter, my revelation as majority shareholder still reverberating. Richard Morgan's face was a mask of fury, his daughter Daniela frozen in my chair, her phone forgotten. I'd just exposed Albert's trust, proving I owned 60% of the company, but the fight wasn't over. The board members clutched their folders, eyes darting between me and Richard, sensing the storm about to break. I tightened my grip on the documents, ready to unveil the rot Richard had sown, knowing one misstep could cost billions in trust and dollars. This wasn't just about my job. It was about saving Global Tech from ruin. I set Albert's letter down, pulling another folder from Mary's box, its contents a meticulously compiled audit. "There's more," I said, my voice slicing through the tense silence. "Albert didn't just protect Global Tech's ownership. He ordered a full audit of its finances, completed after his death." I nodded to Laura, who projected the audit summary onto the boardroom screen. Rows of numbers glowed, detailing transactions that made the board lean forward. "Over the last 2 years," I continued, $50 million has been siphoned from development budgets to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Harold, the grizzled director, squinted at his copy. "This can't be right. Richard, explain this." Richard's chair creaked as he shifted, his bravado crumbling. "That's confidential financial strategy," he stammered. I raised an eyebrow, pointing to the screen. "Confidential? Like the $10 million yacht docked in Miami, registered to a Global Tech subsidiary? Or the $15 million private jet you bought through a shell company?" The boardroom erupted in murmurs, directors flipping through the audit with growing alarm. "And let's not forget the $25 million condo in South Beach," I added. "Billed as a corporate retreat, but used for your vacations." Richard's face drained of color, his hands gripping the table. "This is a setup, Zara. You're twisting the truth." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a message from James, our head of development. I glanced at it, my stomach lurching. Daniela gave her boyfriend full access to SecureBank's source code. He's posted snippets online, calling it outdated. I held up the phone, my voice steady despite the rage boiling inside. "Gentlemen, we have a security crisis. Daniela shared proprietary code protecting billions in bank transactions, with an unqualified influencer." Daniela's eyes widened, her voice shrill. "I just wanted a second opinion. My boyfriend knows tech." I turned to her, incredulous. "A TikTok influencer? For a system safeguarding America's banks?" The board's murmurs turned to outrage. Harold slammed his folder shut. "This is unacceptable. A breach like this could violate every client contract we have." Another director, a stern woman named Evelyn, pointed at Daniela. "You gave sensitive code to an outsider? Do you realize the liability?" Daniela shrank in her chair, her earlier arrogance gone. I thought, He could help modernize it, she mumbled. Richard tried to intervene, his voice weak. She didn't mean harm. It's a misunderstanding. I shook my head, addressing the board. This isn't a misunderstanding, it's negligence. Secure Bank's integrity is at stake, and our clients deserve better. Laura stood, her legal binder open. Zara's right. Unauthorized code access breaches our agreements with major banks. We're facing potential lawsuits, not to mention reputational damage. The screen flickered as she pulled up a screenshot from the influencer's social media, showing Secure Bank's code alongside a caption. Time to fix this ancient system. The board gasped, Evelyn clutching her pearls. This is a disaster, she said. Richard, how could you let this happen? Richard slumped, his authority evaporating. I trusted Daniela, he muttered, but the board wasn't listening. I stepped to the center of the room, the weight of Albert's trust grounding me. Albert warned me about this, I said, my voice carrying a quiet fire. He knew Richard's priorities. Personal gain over the company's mission could lead to chaos. That's why he gave me control. I held up the audit's final page, detailing bonuses Richard had redirected to himself while development teams scraped by. This isn't leadership, I said. It's plunder. Harold nodded, his jaw tight. We've seen enough. This company's on the brink because of you, Richard. Daniela's lip trembled, her voice barely a whisper. Daddy, do something. But Richard was a ghost of himself, staring at the audit as if it were his obituary. The board's outrage swelled, directors exchanging furious glances. Evelyn spoke, her tone icy. We need to act now to contain this breach and address the financial misconduct. I met her gaze, knowing the next moments would decide Global Tech's fate. Agreed, I said. But it starts with accountability. Richard and Daniela must answer for this, and we need to secure Secure Bank before the damage spreads. The room pulsed with tension, every eye on me. I felt Albert's presence, his words echoing. Protect what matters. Richard's empire was crumbling, Daniela's recklessness exposed, and the board was ready to move. But this was only the beginning. The real battle, reclaiming Global Tech's soul, lay ahead, and I was prepared to lead it. The Global Tech Solutions boardroom was a crucible of reckoning, the weight of Richard Morgan's betrayal, and Daniela's recklessness hanging like smoke. I, Zara Thompson, stood at the center, the board's outrage fueling my resolve as I held the evidence of $50 million misappropriated and Secure Bank's code exposed online. Richard slumped in his chair, a fallen king, while Daniela's eyes glistened with panic. The directors, once his allies, now looked to me, their majority shareholder, to chart the path forward. Albert Morgan's trust had armed me with power, but the real test was using it to save the company, not for revenge, but for redemption. As the board's murmurs grew, I knew this moment would define Global Tech's future. Harold, the grizzled director, rose, his voice gravelly with authority. This is a travesty. Richard's malfeasance and Daniela's negligence threaten everything we've built. I propose an immediate vote to remove Richard as CEO. Evelyn, her expression steely, seconded the motion. Agreed. His leadership is a liability. Richard's head snapped up, desperation in his eyes. You can't do this. I'm Albert's son. I met his gaze, my voice calm but firm. You were CEO, Richard, but $50 million in personal luxuries and a security breach qualify as just cause for removal. The board nodded, their folders of evidence damning. Laura, the legal director, called the vote. All in favor? Hands shot up, unanimous. Richard's shoulders sagged, his reign over. Laura turned to me, her binder closed. Zara, as the majority shareholder and the architect of Secure Bank, the board recommends you as interim CEO to navigate this crisis. The room's attention shifted, a weight settling on me. Daniela whimpered, This isn't fair, but no one listened. I stepped to the window, Chicago's skyline a stark reminder of Albert's legacy. His words echoed, Power is to protect. I turned back, my decision clear. I accept, I said, but on 3 conditions. The board leaned in, pens poised. First, we implement transparent governance. No more hidden accounts. Second, we establish an employee innovation fund to reward ideas from the ground up. Third, we give Richard and Daniela a chance to make this right. The directors exchanged glances, surprised by my leniency. Harold frowned. After all this, you'd let them stay? I nodded, glancing at Richard's defeated form. No criminal charges, Richard. If you return every cent of the $50 million, you'll keep a small, non-voting share, but your influence ends here. Richard swallowed hard, nodding faintly. I turned to Daniela, whose mascara was streaked. And you, Daniela, start as a trainee in development. If you want to lead in tech, you'll learn it from the code up. She bit her lip, silent, but her eyes held a flicker of something new, humility perhaps. Evelyn spoke, her tone pragmatic. What about the code breach? Banks are already calling. I gestured to Laura. We'll issue a statement, lock down Secure Bank's servers, and patch the exposed code. I'll meet with clients personally to rebuild trust. Laura nodded, jotting notes. It's a start. Your leadership's our best shot. The board murmured agreement, their confidence a lifeline. Mary, standing by the door, gave me a small smile, her earlier fear replaced by pride. I felt the gravity of my new role, not just as CEO, but as guardian of Albert's vision. As the meeting adjourned, I lingered by the window, the city's pulse steadying my own. Albert had seen this day coming, his trust a shield against his son's greed. Protect what matters, he'd said, and I understood now. Not just the company, but its people, the coders, the dreamers, even the fallen. Richard and Daniela had faltered, but I wouldn't discard them. Leadership wasn't about destruction, it was about building, even from ashes. My phone buzzed. James, reporting the team's relief at Richard's ousting. "We're with you, Zara," he wrote. I smiled, tucking the phone away. The boardroom emptied, leaving me with Mary, who gathered the scattered folders. "You could have crushed them," she said softly. "Why didn't you?" I traced the edge of Albert's letter still on the table. Because Albert believed in second chances. He gave me one when I was just a coder. Now it's my turn. Mary nodded, her eyes bright. "He'd be proud, Zara." I hoped so. The crisis wasn't over. Banks needed reassuring, code needed securing, but I felt ready. Global Tech was mine to protect, and I'd lead it not with vengeance, but with the strength Albert saw in me. The real work began now. 6 months after the boardroom showdown that crowned me interim CEO, I stand in my Chicago office at Global Tech Solutions, the city's heartbeat syncing with my own. I'm Zara Thompson, and the storm that nearly sank this company, Richard Morgan's greed, Daniela's recklessness, has given way to a dawn of renewal. The scars of that day linger, but they've forged something stronger. A global tech reborn, its pulse driven by innovation and trust. As I gaze at Lake Michigan's shimmer, I feel Albert Morgan's presence, his belief in me, a beacon. This isn't just a company, it's a promise kept, and today I see its future unfolding. The development floor hums with energy, coders collaborating on Secure Bank 3.0, a system fortified with new safeguards. Daniela, once the epitome of entitlement, now sits in a corner, her designer dresses swapped for jeans, her fingers dancing over a keyboard. She's a trainee, learning algorithms under James's guidance, and to my surprise, she's good, really good. Last week, she pitched a security patch that caught even James off guard. "She's got potential," he told me, a grudging respect in his voice. Daniela's arrogance has softened, replaced by a quiet determination to prove herself, not to her father, but to the team she once dismissed. Richard, too, has changed. He returned $48 million of the misappropriated funds, selling his yacht and condo to cover the rest. Now a consultant, he works remotely, his reports precise and devoid of the old swagger. I insisted on clear boundaries, no boardroom access, no influence. He's learning to respect the rules, a humbling shift for a man who once saw global tech as his kingdom. Our banks, initially shaken by the code leak, renewed their contracts after I flew coast to coast, demonstrating our new security protocols. Transparency, my first condition as CEO, rebuilt their faith, and Secure Bank's uptime hasn't faltered since. My office remains simple, a nod to Albert's no-nonsense style. 2 photos adorn my desk, one of the original dev team, grinning after Secure Bank's launch, and one of Albert, his eyes crinkling at my first promotion. A framed quote sits between them. "Power is to protect. It's my North Star." Mary bursts in, her tablet glowing with data. "The Employee Innovation Fund's a hit," she says, beaming. 20 proposals this quarter, from coders to admins. I smile, picturing Albert's nod of approval. The fund, my second condition, has unleashed ideas we'd never have tapped otherwise. A new encryption model, a user-friendly interface, all from the ground up. My laptop pings with an email from Daniela. "Can we review my proposal for the banking module? I think it'll boost efficiency." I type back, "Development room, 3 p.m. Warmth spreading through me. She's learning, not just code, but the grit it takes to build something real. I lean back, the skyline a canvas of possibility. Albert chose me because he saw beyond titles, to the heart of leadership. Creation, not destruction. Guidance, not fear. We didn't just save global tech, we made it better, a mosaic of second chances and shared purpose. Mary lingers, her voice soft. "Albert would be proud, Zara. You didn't just protect his legacy, you grew it." I touch the framed quote, its truth anchoring me. "He knew what he was doing," I say, "and now we all do." The development room awaits, Daniela's proposal a small step in a larger journey. True power, I've learned, isn't in owning 60% of a company. It's in fostering those who'll carry it forward. Albert's vision lives, not in boardrooms, but in the code we write, the trust we build, and the lives we protect. That's the legacy I lead, and it's only just begun.